The Vorthak archaeological expedition had traveled for months to reach the dead world that ancient star charts called Earth. Their ships landed softly on the frozen surface, kicking up clouds of ice crystals that sparkled in the pale sunlight. For 300 years, this planet had been silent. No transmissions, no signs of life, just endless winter and the ruins of a civilization that had simply vanished. Dr. Rilthon stepped out of the landing craft and breathed in the thin, cold air through his environmental suit. His four-armed body moved carefully across the treacherous ice as he surveyed the landscape. Where once mighty cities had stood, now only twisted metal and crumbling concrete remained. The Vorthak were naturally curious beings, their entire culture built around learning and discovery. This dead world represented the greatest mystery in their sector of the galaxy. The dig site was established in what their orbital scans had identified as the most promising location. Ancient maps suggested this had once been a mountain range called the Himalayas, a place where humans had built massive structures deep underground. The Vorthak team consisted of 12 researchers, each specializing in different aspects of xenoarchaeology. They had studied dozens of extinct civilizations, but none fascinated them more than humanity. Senior researcher Malthan activated the deep ground scanners, while other team members began setting up the excavation equipment. The first day yielded only frozen soil and fragments of ancient metal. The second day brought pieces of what appeared to be advanced technology, far more sophisticated than anything they had expected to find. By the third day, their scanners were detecting something truly extraordinary. The readings were impossible to believe at first. The scanners showed large metallic structures buried nearly 200 meters beneath the surface. Not just random debris, but organized, purposeful construction. Dr. Rilthon called for the heavy excavation drones, massive machines that could bore through ice and rock with precision. As they worked, the true scope of their discovery began to emerge. The structures were chambers, dozens of them arranged in perfect military rows like soldiers standing at attention. Each chamber was roughly the size of a human adult, sealed, with technology that had somehow survived centuries of harsh conditions. The metal was unlike anything in the Vorthak database, an alloy that showed no signs of corrosion or decay despite its obvious age. When they finally cleared enough debris to examine the first chamber closely, Dr. Rilthon felt his heart racing with excitement. Through a small transparent section they could see inside. A human male lay motionless within, his body preserved in what appeared to be perfect condition. Frost covered the viewing window, but they could make out his features clearly. He appeared young, perhaps 30 years old by human standards, with dark hair and pale skin, but it was the modifications that made Malthan's voice tremble when he spoke. Running along the human's spine were metallic implants, clearly cybernetic in nature. Similar devices were attached to his skull, creating a network of technology that merged seamlessly with biological tissue. This was not the body of an ordinary civilian. The modifications were military-grade, designed for combat and enhanced performance. The chamber's systems were still active. After 3 centuries, power still flowed through the preservation unit. The technology was so advanced that even the Vorthak, with all their scientific knowledge, could barely understand how it functioned. The life signs were stable, the body perfectly maintained in suspended animation. Other team members began examining the surrounding chambers, and each one revealed similar occupants. Human males and females, all young and physically perfect, all bearing the same types of military cybernetic enhancements. Some had different modifications: enhanced vision systems, strengthened skeletal structures, neural processors that suggested advanced tactical capabilities. Dr. Rilthon studied the data streaming from their scanners. Every piece of information suggested the same conclusion that Malthan had voiced. These were not scientists or explorers or ordinary citizens who had sought shelter in these chambers. They were warriors, enhanced and modified for warfare on a scale the peaceful Vorthak could barely imagine. The preservation systems were so sophisticated that revival appeared not only possible but straightforward. The humans had designed these chambers to maintain life indefinitely, waiting for some signal or condition that would wake them from their long sleep. As Dr. Rilthon examined the revival protocols, he realized this was more than just an archaeological Discovery. This was the find that would transform their understanding of human civilization forever. Despite the obvious military nature of their subjects, Dr. Rilthon made the decision that would change the galaxy. The revival sequence began with the first chamber, ancient machinery humming to life as it slowly warmed the sleeping warrior within. The first sensation was cold. Not the gentle cold of morning air, but the bone-deep chill that comes from centuries of frozen sleep. Minho's consciousness emerged slowly, like surfacing from the bottom of a deep lake. His enhanced nervous system began running diagnostic checks automatically, cataloging the state of his body and the environment around him. His eyes snapped open with mechanical precision. 4 alien faces stared down at him, their features unlike anything in his memory banks. The closest one had pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to show genuine concern. Another had multiple arms and a chitinous exterior that reminded him of insects from Earth's ancient forests. The third possessed tentacle-like appendages, where a mouth should be, while the fourth appeared almost reptilian with scales that shifted color as it moved. Minho's cybernetic implants immediately began their threat assessment protocol. His enhanced vision systems analyzed the room's dimensions, identifying 3 possible exit routes and cataloging potential weapons within reach. His neural processors calculated the aliens' physical capabilities based on their body structure and movement patterns. The tactical overlay in his mind painted the scene in cold military terms. 4 hostiles, unknown capabilities, enclosed environment with limited escape options. But his training ran deeper than just physical assessment. These aliens moved without the fluid grace of warriors. They carried what appeared to be scientific instruments rather than weapons. Their body language suggested curiosity rather than aggression. They were researchers, scholars perhaps, not soldiers. In military terms, they were soft targets. The largest alien, the one with blue skin, made gentle sounds that his language processors couldn't immediately translate. The creature reached toward him slowly, offering a container that appeared to hold water. Minho's enhanced senses detected no toxins or harmful substances in the liquid. His implants suggested the gesture was peaceful, perhaps even caring. Minho made a calculated decision. He would play the role of confused survivor, the helpless human awakening in a strange place with no memory of how he arrived there. His face arranged itself into an expression of bewilderment and fear, though inside his mind remained sharp and focused. He accepted the water with trembling hands, allowing some of it to spill as if his motor functions were still impaired from the long sleep. The aliens seemed pleased by his response. They spoke among themselves in their strange language while one of them made notes on a device that glowed with soft light. Through careful observation and his enhanced hearing, Minho began picking up patterns in their speech. His linguistic implants started building a basic translation matrix, slowly making sense of their words. They called themselves Vorthak. The blue-skinned one appeared to be their leader, someone they addressed with obvious respect. Through simple gestures and gradually improving translation, Minho learned that they were archaeologists who had discovered his chamber. They spoke of humans in past tense, believing his entire species had vanished from the galaxy centuries ago. This information triggered new calculations in Minho's tactical processors. If humans were believed extinct, then his awakening represented a significant intelligence advantage. These aliens had no idea what they were dealing with. They saw him as a historical curiosity, a relic from a dead civilization to be studied and preserved. The irony wasn't lost on him. They thought they had discovered humanity's past, but they had actually awakened its future. As the hours passed, Minho played his role perfectly. He asked simple questions about where he was and what had happened to his world. He showed appropriate sadness when they explained that Earth was now frozen and dead. He expressed gratitude for their care and curiosity about their civilization. All the while his implants were working constantly, mapping the facility through micro-vibrations in the floor and walls, analyzing electromagnetic signatures from their equipment, building a complete 3-dimensional model of his prison, because that's what this was, despite their kindness. A prison with walls made of misunderstanding rather than metal bars. The Vorthak researchers were fascinated by every aspect of his biology. They ran gentle scans of his cybernetic implants, marveling at the integration between organic tissue and artificial components. They asked endless questions about human culture, technology, and history. Minho answered carefully, revealing just enough truth to maintain credibility while concealing anything that might make them suspicious of his true nature. What they didn't know was that his biometric readings were being transmitted to the other chambers through frequencies their equipment couldn't detect. Each heartbeat, each neural spike, each carefully controlled stress response was sending signals to his sleeping comrades. The revival protocols built into their preservation systems were already responding to his awakening. Deep beneath the ice, in chambers arranged like sleeping soldiers, ancient machinery was slowly coming to life. Temperature controls were gradually adjusting. Nutrient flows were increasing. Neural stimulation patterns were beginning their carefully programmed sequences. His brothers and sisters would wake soon. And when they did, these peaceful researchers would learn that some relics from the past were better left buried. The second awakening came exactly 18 hours after Minho opened his eyes. The Vorthak researchers had been monitoring the other chambers when the preservation systems began their revival sequence. Dr. Rilthon rushed to the observation deck as the second chamber's frost began melting away, revealing another human male inside. Hion's eyes opened with the same mechanical precision as Minho's had. His first movements were subtle but telling to anyone who understood military training. While the aliens saw a confused man slowly regaining consciousness, Hion was already assessing structural weak points in the walls around him. His specialty had always been demolitions, and even after centuries of sleep, his mind automatically calculated blast patterns and load-bearing vulnerabilities. The researchers helped him from his chamber with the same gentle care they had shown Minho. They offered him water and simple food, speaking in soothing tones while their instruments recorded every detail of his revival. What they didn't notice was the brief moment when Hion's eyes met Minho's across the room. No words were exchanged, but volumes of information passed between them in that single glance. Minho had established the protocol. Play weak, act confused, gather intelligence. Hion understood immediately and began his own performance, stumbling slightly as he stood and looking around with apparent bewilderment. The aliens interpreted this as normal disorientation from the revival process. They had no idea they were watching a coordinated deception. The third awakening brought Jisoo back to consciousness. Her cybernetic interfaces activated flawlessly, connecting her enhanced nervous system to the facility's electromagnetic spectrum. While the Vorthak marveled at the seamless integration of technology and biology in her body, Jisoo was already hacking into their computer systems through wireless connections they didn't know existed. Her neural implants gave her access to their data networks, their communication systems, even their security protocols. She played her role perfectly, appearing weak and grateful for their care, while her consciousness expanded through every electronic system in the facility. She mapped their defenses, identified their weaknesses, and began building digital backdoors that would serve her team when the time came. The researchers saw a fascinating example of human-machine integration. Jisoo saw a network ripe for exploitation. Daeho woke on the fourth day, his sniper's instincts immediately cataloging sightlines and target acquisition opportunities throughout the facility. His enhanced vision systems automatically calculated distances and wind factors, even in the enclosed environment. The researchers noted his exceptional visual acuity during their tests, not realizing they were watching a predator evaluate his hunting ground. Each new awakening followed the same careful pattern. The humans appeared weak and disoriented while their enhanced abilities came online systematically. They asked innocent questions about their situation while gathering tactical intelligence. They accepted help gratefully while memorizing every detail of their captors' routines and capabilities. The Vorthak researchers were fascinated by what they saw as pack behavior among the humans. They documented how the awakened humans seemed to naturally group together, how they developed what appeared to be a social hierarchy, how they communicated through subtle gestures and body language. Dr. Rilthon published preliminary reports, describing humanity's warrior caste as having sophisticated social structures based on military rank and specialization. What he didn't understand was that he was watching the formation of a tactical unit, not a social group. The humans weren't bonding through shared experience of captivity. They were establishing command structure, assigning roles, and preparing for operations. Their subtle communications weren't social interaction. They were tactical briefings conducted in a language of glances, hand positions, and micro-expressions that the aliens couldn't begin to interpret. The researchers provided the humans with various tools and equipment for what they called cultural demonstrations. They wanted to understand human technology and craftsmanship, so they gave them access to workshops and laboratories throughout the facility. The humans accepted these gifts with apparent gratitude, using them to create what appeared to be artistic or ceremonial objects. In reality, they were manufacturing weapons and tools. Hyon turned innocent materials into explosive devices using principles that hadn't changed in centuries. Jisoo modified their provided electronics into communication devices and surveillance equipment. Daiho crafted precision instruments that could serve as sniper tools when the time came. The aliens saw cultural artifacts being created. The humans were building an arsenal. The facility became their training ground without the Vorthak realizing it. The humans requested access to different sections for historical research and cultural exploration. The researchers eagerly provided these opportunities, excited to see how these ancient warriors would react to modern technology and environments. They didn't notice how the humans memorized every corridor, every ventilation shaft, every security checkpoint. Guard rotations were observed and recorded. Weapon storage locations were identified and mapped. Communication systems were studied and infiltrated. Emergency protocols were analyzed and countermeasures planned. The aliens saw scientific subjects adapting to their new environment. The humans saw a target-rich environment and began planning accordingly. By the end of 72 hours, 23 warriors had awakened. Each brought their own specialized skills and knowledge to the growing tactical unit. Their conditioning was absolute and uncompromising. Trust nothing alien. Eliminate all threats to human survival. Secure the area at any cost. The pack was forming, and soon it would be time to hunt. The lights flickered at 14:23 station time. It was nothing more than a routine power fluctuation caused by maintenance work on the facility's main generator. The Vorthak engineering team had scheduled the work weeks in advance, and everyone on the station knew it would cause minor disruptions to the electrical systems. For the alien researchers, it was just another ordinary day with a small inconvenience. For the awakened humans, it was the signal they had been unconsciously waiting for. Minho felt the change before he saw it. His enhanced nervous system detected the power fluctuation through micro-variations in the electromagnetic field around him. His cybernetic implants immediately shifted into combat mode, flooding his system with adrenaline and sharpening his senses to supernatural levels. The slight dimming of the lights lasted less than 2 seconds, but his military conditioning interpreted it as the beginning of an enemy attack. In the research lab where he had been demonstrating human tool-making techniques just moments before, Minho's entire demeanor changed. The curious, grateful survivor disappeared, replaced by something the Vorthak had never encountered. His movements became fluid and predatory, his eyes scanning for threats and targets with mechanical precision. The transformation was instant and terrifying. Hyun was in the facility's technical section when the lights flickered. He had been showing the researchers how humans maintained their equipment, earning their trust while secretly studying their security systems. The moment the power fluctuated, his demolitions expertise kicked in. He could see the facility's vulnerabilities as clearly as if they were highlighted in bright colors. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, using the tools the aliens had provided him to access the station's main power distribution panel. Within seconds, he had rewired critical systems and planted improvised explosive devices at key structural points. The Vorthak engineers working nearby didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. Jisoo's reaction was perhaps the most devastating. Her cybernetic interfaces had been passively monitoring the facility's computer networks for days, learning their systems and mapping their digital infrastructure. When the power fluctuation triggered her combat protocols, she unleashed years of accumulated access and knowledge in a coordinated cyber attack. Security cameras went blind. Communication systems failed. Door locks engaged or disengaged according to her will rather than their programming. Emergency protocols designed to protect the station's inhabitants instead became tools for their capture. The facility's own technology turned against its creators in ways they couldn't comprehend. Daeho was in the observation deck with several researchers when the lights dimmed. His sniper's instincts had been cataloging targets and sight lines throughout his time on the station, information that his conscious mind had dismissed as unnecessary. Now that same targeting data became crucial intelligence. 3 Vorthak security personnel were stationed at strategic points throughout the facility. They carried what appeared to be non-lethal restraint weapons, tools designed for scientific work rather than combat. They had never needed anything more dangerous because violence was virtually unknown in their peaceful society. Daeho moved with the silent efficiency of a predator. Using improvised weapons crafted from materials the researchers had freely provided, he neutralized all 3 guards before any of them could raise an alarm or call for help. His movements were so quick and quiet that most of the facility's inhabitants didn't even know the security team had been eliminated. The coordinated assault lasted exactly 17 seconds, from the moment the lights flickered to the moment the facility was completely under human control. It was a masterpiece of tactical precision that would have been studied and admired by military strategists across the galaxy, if any had survived to witness it. Dr. Rilthon found himself pressed against the wall of his own laboratory, staring into eyes that held no recognition of their previous friendly interactions. The human he had treated with such care and respect now looked at him as nothing more than a potential threat to be evaluated and possibly eliminated. The researcher's voice shook as he tried to explain what had happened. The power fluctuation was routine maintenance, he insisted. There was no attack, no threat, no reason for violence. The station was a place of learning and discovery, not warfare. The humans were safe here, welcomed as honored guests and subjects of peaceful study. But his words fell on ears that had been conditioned to trust nothing alien. The humans had been programmed for a war that ended centuries ago, trained to see enemies in every shadow and threats in every unexpected sound. Their neural conditioning ran deeper than conscious thought, deeper than reason, deeper than the evidence of their own senses. To them, the power fluctuation was enemy action. The facility was a prison. The researchers were captors. The security team represented hostile forces. Everything their training had taught them about alien intentions was being confirmed by their current situation. The research station that had been a beacon of scientific discovery and interspecies cooperation became something else entirely. Corridors that had echoed with excited discussions about archaeological findings now rang with the sound of tactical movements and whispered combat communications. Laboratories that had buzzed with the peaceful work of discovery became command centers for military operations. The transformation was complete. The ancient human warriors had awakened, and they were doing exactly what they had been designed to do centuries ago. The research station's primary communication array had been designed by the Vorthak for peaceful purposes. It could transmit scientific data across vast distances, coordinate archaeological expeditions, and maintain contact with their home worlds. The sophisticated equipment could reach any corner of the galaxy with crystal-clear signals that traveled faster than light itself. None of its creators had ever imagined it would become the instrument of galactic catastrophe. Minho stood before the massive transmitter array, his enhanced fingers moving across controls that Jisoo had helped him understand. Her cybernetic interfaces had cracked the alien technologies, encryption and navigation systems, giving him complete access to the galaxy's communication networks. The irony wasn't lost on him that the very aliens who had awakened him were now providing the tools for what would come next. The message he prepared was simple, encoded in frequencies that only human military systems would recognize. It contained authentication codes that had been drilled into every warrior during their training, signals that would be automatically accepted by dormant systems across former human space. The words themselves were unremarkable, but their meaning would reshape the galaxy. Humanity survives Initiate final protocols. With a single keystroke, Minho released the signal into the void. The transmission raced outward from the research station at speeds that defied comprehension. Within minutes, it had crossed light years of empty space, penetrating the depths of the galaxy where human civilization had once flourished. The message split and multiplied as it encountered relay stations and communication networks, spreading like wildfire through automated systems that had been waiting centuries for this moment. On the frozen moon of Kepler 442b, buried beneath miles of ice and rock, an ancient facility detected the signal. Massive fusion reactors that had slumbered for 300 years suddenly roared to life, their energy feeding into cryogenic systems that housed 200 human warriors. Revival protocols activated automatically, beginning the slow process of awakening soldiers who had been specifically trained for deep space warfare. In the asteroid belt of the Proxima Centauri system, a hidden military base received the transmission and responded immediately. Automated defense platforms that had masqueraded as mining equipment for centuries revealed their true nature, extending weapon arrays and targeting systems that could obliterate entire fleets. The base's quantum computers began calculating firing, solutions for targets that hadn't existed when they were first programmed. On the dead world of New Terra, where vast cities had once housed millions of human colonists, the signal penetrated deep underground bunkers. Artificial intelligences that had been running on minimal power for 3 centuries suddenly accessed their full computational capacity. They began activating manufacturing facilities, communication networks, and military production lines that had been designed to operate without human oversight. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of Minho's transmission, dozens of automated systems across former human territory were acknowledging receipt of the signal. Ancient protocols that had been designed as humanity's final contingency plan were executing flawlessly, just as their creators had intended. Deho monitored the incoming responses from his position at the station's sensor array. His enhanced vision systems allowed him to process the flood of data streaming across the communication networks. Each acknowledgement represented another piece of humanity's hidden military infrastructure coming online. Each response meant more. Warriors awakening from their centuries-long sleep. The scale of what they had triggered was staggering. Military installations on 47 different worlds reported active status. Deep space monitoring stations began broadcasting their operational readiness. Ghost ships that had drifted silent and dark through the void for 3 centuries suddenly blazed with engine signatures as their automated systems brought them back to life. But perhaps most concerning of all were the human responses. Groups of awakened warriors, each convinced they were humanity's last hope, began reporting their status and requesting orders. Their messages revealed the true scope of humanity's final preparations. These weren't just military installations being activated. These were people, enhanced soldiers like themselves, who had been sleeping in hidden facilities across the galaxy. Each group carried the same psychological conditioning that had shaped Minho's team. They trusted nothing alien. They viewed every non-human species as a potential threat to humanity's survival. They had been programmed to eliminate any obstacle to their mission, no matter the cost. The galaxy had enjoyed an unprecedented period of peace since humanity's disappearance. Trade routes flourished between species that had once lived in fear of human expansion. Diplomatic relations had reached new heights of cooperation and understanding. Entire civilizations had prospered in the absence of humanity's aggressive influence. All of that was about to change. Dr. Rilthon sat bound in his own laboratory, watching the flood of data that showed his archaeological discovery transforming into something unimaginable. Blood trickled from his wrists where the improvised restraints cut into his skin, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the horror of understanding what he had unleashed. They had thought they were discovering relics of humanity's past, artifacts of a dead civilization that could teach them about history and culture. Instead, they had awakened humanity's future, a future that had been carefully planned and prepared for this exact moment. The research station sensors detected the first responding ships already changing course toward their location. More would follow soon. And every one of them carried warriors who knew only war. Soldiers who had been conditioned to see aliens as enemies and peace as a temporary illusion. The galaxy's long peace was ending, and it would end in the way that humanity had always ended things, with overwhelming force and absolute determination to survive.